Wonder if I could ask everyone to take their seats, please. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council Committee of the Whole to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Lauer,
Here.
Alderman Sage,
Here.
Alderman Milwalam, Alderman Milwalamway,
Here.
Alderman Stern, here, Alderman Painter, here, Alderman Schmidt, here, Alderman Black,
Here.
Alderman Howman,
Here.
Alderman Fruin,
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and start with public comment. Again, we have public comment for up to 15 minutes, and people can speak for up to 3 minutes. And we have these cards, and the first is Alton Franklin. You'd come forward, please. Thank you.
My name is Alton Franklin. I live at 508 Patterson Drive here in Bloomington. I was kind of curious as I read through. I appreciate the information that was provided with regards to a lot of the reports. The one thing that struck me as somewhat odd was when I looked at the diagram that basically put the revenues against the expenditures, and I was kind of curious in that it appears that revenues go up to the tune of about 7 or 8 million, but expenditures go up by about twice that amount. And I'm kind of curious as to how that can possibly be, that we get twice as many expenditures as we do revenues. It seems like we're continuing in the vicious cycle that we've been in since I've been coming to these city council meetings. I'd like to know, it seems like there's a lot of talk, but I haven't seen any action. All I've seen is, and actually most of that talk has been about talk. It's about, we're planning this meeting, we're going to be discussing this. I like the idea of priority-based budgeting. It sounds like it could hold some promise. From the aspect of possibly raising the volume on the citizen's voice. My concern there is that the council and all the mayors I've known have a distinct propensity for listening but not hearing. We went through the debacle some years back with regards to the Civic Center, down to the point of going to a referendum where the citizens said no, and it happened anyway. I've been hearing a lot of noise about a downtown hotel, which the best figures I've seen coming out of that, there's a $17 million shortfall. And it all ties in with this budget. And I don't get it. It seems like we're getting, that being the citizens that I'm referring to, we as citizens hear what the city council says and we watch what they do. It doesn't seem like the favor's returned. It seems like the best that's given is lip service. Oh, it's great having public involvement. Yes, citizen engagement. And nothing happens. At least nothing related to what the citizens provide input on. I hope I can see some change in that in the future. Thank you.
Next is Glenn Ludwig.
Good evening. I'm Glenn Ludwig. I live at 23 Astoria Way. And I thanks to you, Mr. Mayor, and to the council for giving me this opportunity to speak. Before I go any further, I want to say that my remarks and comments are solely mine. They don't have anything to do with any organization I may be a member of or anything like that. I'm only representing myself with my comments. I'm here to talk for a moment or two, linked to your item 5E on this meeting's agenda, the priority-based budgeting. I was present back in August, I think it was August 18th, when you first introduced this subject, and I went home that night really feeling good and positive and excited about the possibility of you adopting this new approach to the budget creation. I strongly support starting with the revenue stream and then following up by allocating and prioritizing your expenditures so that they match up. I think that's the way business needs to do it. That's the way government needs to do it. I realize that priority-based budgeting will be a challenge at first because it's going to be a lot different, but a lot of things in life that are difficult and challenging are really good. So I hope that you'll buy into that and and follow up on this. I don't know what you're going to say tonight. I hope I'll feel as good tonight when I go home as I did back in August. I believe that City Manager Hale has surrounded himself with some very highly qualified people, and I believe that given the opportunity, and it's going to be a lot of hard work, that they will do a good job of the legwork and pulling things together to make the council's job in the budgeting process much easier. So I really feel good about that, and I think that you've got the quality of staff and that they need to be used for this particular process. So I encourage you to really try to do this in the future. I think that priority-based budgeting is reality. We need a whole lot more reality across this nation in many, many places with regards to how we spend money. So here's what I'd suggest. Using a popular slogan here in Bloomington right now, I say bring it on Bloomington. Take the lead with priority-based budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bruce Meeks.
Bruce Meeks, thank you for this time. If somebody were to quit using their insulin or stop taking their heart medication, would you use that situation to be humorous as a person or as an elected official? Off your meds is one of those expressions that should not be used by any elected official. Those that have received any email like this should have not treated it as casually as you have up till tonight. As perfectly acceptable phrase to describe someone who is viewed as irrational or who is behaving in any way that is deemed unacceptable by the person using this expression or authoring the email. Not in our town. This is not an acceptable phrase to be used by any elected officials. It seems that individuals that use this phrase assume there will be no offense to anyone and will actually draw people to their opinion. Just recently it's come to light that indeed at least one of you have used off their meds phrase, and in the context that seems to be to discredit, to demoralize people that do not agree with you in a very self-serving, self-centered, and in the interests of the one and not the many approach with the citizens. To talk down to people that I'm totally right, that I am totally right and you're totally wrong is not respectful, nor decent, nor democracy at its best. When people use the phrase off your meds to take a dig at someone, they are indicating that they will believe the target of that phrase is delusional or foolish or in some way that they're indicative of mental illness. Stripping the phrase down to the core using off your meds as a joke is essentially saying that mental illness is something to be laughed at. And people with using no medications to manage mental illness are appropriate targets of ridicule, or that make a person entertaining or perhaps annoying in such a way that's perfectly acceptable to mock them. Citizens in our city should not ever be mocked by any elected official, and there has been an ongoing trend that's been occurring, which is my firm belief is tactical and in nature as well as political for some time now, both in emails and at these very proceedings. This is far from being nonpartisan. This is far from being anywhere close to Robert's Rule of Order and decorum. When did you as legislators that have seen the phrase in the email and others like it stand up for the citizens being discounted, discredited, demoralized with a statement such as this? Not in our town. Stop it now. And it's very unfortunate that we don't have an ability under home rule to recall an elected official. I hope that you also tonight will consider even though I've been a little forthright with my statement, that you will finally vote for putting the open data ordinance that I have suggested on the committee's agenda in the near future.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move right along to item number 4, Committee of the Whole minutes from August 18th, 2014. Do I have a motion that the reading of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole proceedings of August 18th, 2014 be dispensed with and that the minutes be approved as printed? Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Painter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by
Yes.
Alderman Lauer. Okay. And we'll go ahead and vote. Okay. Let's see, Alderman Fruin. Okay. There are 9 ayes, 0 nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you. All right. Moving right along, we'll move to item 5A, and that is Property Casualty Liability Insurance and Workers' Compensation Insurance Annual Accountability Reports, presented by Mike Nugent, Nugent Consulting, and our city manager. And we've got approximately 20 minutes for presentation and approximately 20 minutes for question and answer. And I'll be keeping time. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, let me just make a few quick comments. It was back in 2009 when the city of Bloomington left RIMCO, disbanded SERPA, 2 entities that were involved in the city's insurance program, and we went back to being a self-insured city organization with the purchase of reinsurance to help cover us for large losses. With the help of Mike Nugent back in 2009 and going forward, we've continued to bring to you annually a report on what is happening and what is the trend on not only case volume, but the cost of the insurance coverage we carry. We'll start off with probably the least expensive, and that is property liability and casualty, and then finish with workman's comp, one of the most larger costs, but we deal with each year. But we appreciate Mike Nugent. He consults with many cities, including some municipal insurance pools, and we appreciate having him back to share some of the, especially some of the positives on our insurance coverage for this last year and how that compares with the previous years. So with that, turn the time over to Mike for his presentation.
Okay, thank you all. Table 2 starts the report, and this is the claims volume, the number of claims for the fiscal year ended May 31st, 2014. And from Table 2, you can see that we had a rather significant increase in our claims volume, actually up about 80 claims, which is almost 50%. And that, on the surface, is a little bit concerning. But if you go to Table 14, this is the same data, but for the actual costs of those claims over the same period. And the costs are actually down $175,000 from last year, and roughly 35%. So these are property liability cases. They're non-employee injuries. They're auto accidents that the city has with their vehicles. There's slips and falls on sidewalks, general liability cases involving the police and fire, et cetera. So again, the overall cost is down, and that's a positive. The year before was one of the worst years the city has had. The interesting thing about the data that I find is that the claims volume, the number of claims is up pretty significantly, which is not unusual given our last winter. We had a lot more slip and falls, sidewalk slip and falls, which all of my municipal clients saw. But the fact that your cost went down, most everyone else's cost tracked with their claims volume. So I can't put my finger on the dynamics of it other than let's just celebrate it and move on and hope it's good luck and it continues. I want to go back now. Tables 3 through 6 are the actual by coverage. So the general liability was the coverage where we saw the most significant increase, and again, that's primarily sidewalk slip and fall types of claims. Property claims up marginally, And then the law enforcement claims cut in half from the previous year. And professional liability claims, there were none. Then starting on Table 7, excuse me, let me skip to Table 9 here. Starting on Table 9, we go through the same coverages, but with the actual cost. So the general liability, again, we had a ton more claims, but the cost went down significantly from $148,000 down to $94,000. The auto went up significantly, and this is a couple of, just one significant claim that occurred last year, so I think this data is a little bit skewed given it's just one claim. Law enforcement down significantly, and property up marginally from the previous year, tracking with the actual claims volume. So that's the story of the property and liability claims. Let me hop over now to the work comp if I can figure out how to get out. Looking for escape.
Mayor, do we ask questions as we go or save them for the end?
If you have some along the way that you would like to highlight as it's going, I certainly think that would be in order unless...
Just a very quick question on Table 7. You've got it broken down by department, and I was curious as to how that compared to prior years. And when we have a department like Public Works that is very labor intensive, question is, are we doing everything we can to help educate and be as safe as possible?
So I guess the question on essentially on 7 is because it's aggregated 5 years, and we've got these aggregate totals, was there noise or movement in this, a trend in this over time, or is this comparatively stable?
Good question. Again, with the volume being up significantly, most departments saw an increase in the volume, but certainly Public Works saw the most because they're dealing with more of those weather issues than any other department. So this is up, and I don't have the exact data, but it is up from the previous year.
If I'm understanding, though, is that what you were asking?
Whether there's any value to new and creative education, safety, is there anything we can provide as a city council or city staff to help minimize those expensive claims?
If you could do something about the weather, that would be appreciated by everybody. But short of that, no. Again, I think your property and liability, both the volume and the cost is significantly lower than an outsider would expect if you gave them Bloomington's profile, population, et cetera. So my concern always rests with the work comp and not so much with these lines of coverage. I think the losses are relatively low compared to your size.
Right, continue then.
Okay, so on the work comp side, Table 1's the frequency. So we did that with the property and liability. Same situation, although in this case, the actual claims volume on the workers' compensation side is down from the previous year, which is somewhat unusual because not just citizens slip and fall on sidewalks. Employees, especially with police, fire, public works, getting in and out of vehicles in adverse conditions, most of my municipal clients saw a pretty significant spike up in work comp claims from the previous year to the year we completed. So good for us. We did not see that trend follow the property and liability or what others are seeing with their workers' comp experience. Tables 2 through 7 are departmental data, saying, again, this is claim frequency, not the cost. Fire is down, Parks and Rec is down, police is down, Public Works down, and then water saw a spike up, but a pretty small sample size. So, I mean, that's a big swing percentage-wise, but really nothing concerning in terms of water. All other departments about the same. And then we get in, starting on Table 8, the actual cost. And again, good news for the city is that cost went down relatively significantly from over $2 million down to $1.3 million, which is what we kind of consider an average year for the city. It's not your best year, but it's kind of where we would peg our loss expectation. And again, given the weather conditions from last year, I think hitting kind of the expected number is a pretty good achievement for the city. Then we go by department. Fire is about half of what it was the previous year. The previous year was also one of its worst years. So this is, the 600,000 is still high, and it's something that we want to continue to look at as we move forward, but it's a significant improvement in the previous year. Parks and Rec's about half of the previous year, and then police is also up from the previous year. And again, not significant, and I would say at this volume, more in line with our projection, actually a little bit under our projection. The previous year for police was probably one of their best years ever. So we're kind of returning to what I would consider more normal losses for police.
Okay, so this is really all the data that you have. You have basically 3 years where we were at a little over $500,000, and then we had a huge decline, and now we're up a little bit.
Correct, but still better than those 3 previous years. So again, I think still good results for police. And then Public Works down slightly, water down slightly, and then all other, again, it's a small number.
If I could, just to note there on the Public Works, it's not, it is down slightly from the previous year, but you've got a clear monotonic straight relationship down, right? I mean, we every year we've managed to decrease this over 5 years.
Yep.
In Public Works.
Correct. And again, we just is to try and figure out why that is. Again, some of this is luck, some of it's timing. So we want to be really careful about, taking credit for loss improvement. On the one side, we have struggled with trying to fill a contractor position for safety here. We've gone through a couple of employee of our third-party administrator that just have not worked out for us. And so we're going to continue to look for an outside resource to help us kind of manage our big picture safety program. But the odd thing is with this transition we've been through for about 2 years, our work comp data has really continued to be pretty good. So it makes you think maybe we should not mess with it. But I think we all agree, staff agrees, that we really need this resource. And so we have a claim review tomorrow where we'll also talk about kind of our long-range plan with that, and it's something that'll be on the radar for a while. One of the services we put in place several years ago was this nurse triage service where our employees, when they're injured, call an 800 number and they're talking to an occupational nurse. And I think that service alone has had a significant impact on our losses. It gives HR an opportunity to find the facts of a case a lot earlier than they might have before. And our data, our lag data, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, is still reasonably good, but ticking up slightly, and it's something that we're going to want to watch and maybe have to do some retraining on. Starting on table 15, we look at kind of where our loss data comes from. And 15 shows you that strains tend to be the most significant of losses that we have. It's 260 of our total claims. So it's 46% of the accidents. But if we flip down here, it's also a significant percentage. It's 46% of the accidents and 70% of our overall costs. Again, strains are knees, back, shoulder strains, which are predominantly what any municipality that's got Public Works, Police, and Fire is going to see. That's the nature of the business. On 16, we have the body parts. Again, no surprise there. Backs, knees, and shoulders, and then multiple body parts tends to be neck and shoulders or knee and lower leg, etc. So backs, knees, and shoulders are where our big claims come from. It's where the cost is. It's where the medical costs are. And so no surprise there that that's where most of our volume and most of our money is flowing in terms of workers' comp. Table 19 are the departmental costs. So if you look at the second column from the right, the total incurred number, that's what the city's already paid in losses plus what the outstanding reserves are for those cases. In police, fire, public works, I would be shocked if I didn't see those as the biggest three. And again, no surprise in terms of them being the leading costs for work comp. But again, I think overall, our numbers for that past year have been pretty good. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the lag. We have a goal to get claims reported from when the employee's injured to making the MedCorps call same day. Our bigger picture goal is certainly within 3 days. There are several studies that say a cost of a work comp case that is not reported to the adjuster who gets their hands on it within 3 days costs about 40% more. Also, the other side of it is employee outcomes are much better the sooner the adjuster gets the case and gets to manage the medical part of it. So it's a win for the city and a win for our employees if we keep our lag time under 3. And we've seen a slight increase in our lag, and it's something that I think Angie and I in personnel are going to talk about. Maybe it's time to do some retraining. Some of these are unusual. I mean, it's not unusual for one claim to skew this. If you have an employee who had an event, but 8 months later goes for treatment and then realizes that it was that event that 8 months ago caused it, and they make the call to MedCorps, we've already got this skew in our data. So there is one big skew there in human resources, but most of the rest of this is pretty accurate. And so I think we need to look at some retraining on the MedCorps system to try and get our folks to make the calls timely. And that's my report. Questions?
Okay. Questions from the council? Well, you must have done a remarkably thorough job in covering everything then. Mr. Hales, anything else you want to bring to our attention?
Just, Mike, each year we get together with our state legislators and talk about various priorities, issues, concerns, and of course, there was a lot of hoopla a few years back about workman's comp reform in the state legislature. You want to just kind of recap again what impact, if any, that has had, and as we talk with our state legislators, any further comments, suggestions you might give our elected officials on the future and what really continues to be accomplished in the way of very significant, meaningful workman's comp reform?
The work comp reform really wasn't really all that much of reform, period. There was a pretty significant reduction in the fee schedule, which is the basis for medical payments to providers. But that 30% didn't change where Illinois fell in terms of its position and overall costs for those big three, knees, backs, and shoulders. In fact, Illinois was the second most expensive before the 30% reduction and was still the second most expensive after it. So it was a good start, but there's something needed significantly more than the 30%. Most of our medical procedures are trending towards multiple times what Medicare would pay for the same event if it was not a work comp claim. And so that's really the gap that the legislature could help all self-insureds and anybody who's not self-insured is if they could narrow that gap further and get the medical costs back in line. I think that's probably the most material one. You are in a very difficult business with all three of your biggest departments in terms of losses. Public Works, Police, and Fire are very difficult jobs, and they're really asked to do a lot, especially Police and Fire in terms of emergency situations. You know, everybody talks about wellness, but you can't ask a police officer in the middle of a domestic dispute to have everybody just stop so he can stretch a little bit and get ready to get in there and fix the problem. And so it is a very tough business, and anything the legislature can do to help the city deal with the work comp benefits that go with that would be helpful. The PSEBA benefit is a great benefit, but it is used more often than it really needs to be. The initial benefit was supposed to be for catastrophic injury. And I think if we all talk to each other about what catastrophic meant, we're visualizing somebody who fought a fire and was really badly injured, or a police officer who in a chase was really badly injured. But now catastrophic really means I strained my shoulder in training. And so it would be helpful if that could get clarified and perhaps rein in some of those other non-work comp costs as well.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much then.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Moving right along to item 5B, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, proposed pilot program for mobile home rehabilitation. We have about a 5-minute presentation and then about 15 minutes for question, answer, policy discussion. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Hales.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. And B and C are somewhat interrelated. Certainly, this pilot program deals with the current fiscal year, and then right after that, we're going to give it a little update on the current year, as well as talking about the following year. We have with us tonight Sharon Walker, and I think we also need to recognize that Sharon, even though she's been one of the most outstanding CDBG coordinators, managers I've had the pleasure to work with, sadly, she and her husband are going to retire here in another month or two, I think the end of December. And they've chosen to go to sunny Phoenix, Arizona, correct?
Tucson area.
Tucson,
yes.
Tucson, even further south. So
Right.
this may be one of her last public presentations to the council, but she just done an outstanding job, and we have one opportunity to hear from her on our CDBG program. So I'll turn this first one
What
over to
happened
her.
to sunny Bloomington?
Seen the sun in about a week here, so I don't know. Yes, it was beautiful today.
I had my top down today.
Did you? Well, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for the
We're going to
kind.
miss you. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind remarks, David. Instead of going ahead and reading to you or going over things again that were in the memo that I already provided, I thought I'd just hit some highlights. And basically, the Construction Charities project that I'd like to propose this evening is going to be utilizing some of our carryover funds that we had from the previous year, still within the rehab project area that we fund each and every year, but we're kind of expanding that rehab to include mobile homes, which we really have never done before. Up until about 10 years ago, HUD did not see mobile home rehabilitation as an eligible activity. And I think their thought on that was it wasn't on a permanent foundation. They technically could move the mobile home out and take whatever benefit that we would have provided with them to another community. And at the time, city administration agreed that they didn't want to see funding go for rehab other than permanent single-family structures. Time has moved on, and we see a lot of need in the mobile home parks year after year. We get several calls, and unfortunately, we always have to tell them, or we have in the past, that we just are not funding that. The statistics show that a lot of the folks that live in the mobile home parks are low to moderate income, so they definitely qualify. I don't think I had in your packets, or it might have been actually included in with the next item, but there are some maps of where the mobile home parks, I don't know if you were able to see those, are located. They're primarily, the majority of them, in 2 wards, as you can see, and those are all within our low and moderate income guideline area. So I guess I want to come to you because this is somewhat of a new proposal, something that we've not done in the past. We are going to be working with, if approved, Construction Charities, who's an organization, a nonprofit organization that actually approached us at seeing if we could work together. The mobile home parks was something we came up with then together. We have Mr. Jim Snyder, who is the president and CEO of Construction Charities, here this evening if you have specific questions for him or their organizations. Other than that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions regarding need, the project in general.
Questions of Sharon? Alderwoman Painter and Milwaukee, we'll just keep going from my right all the way over. Okay, go ahead, John. and
Well,
then
thank
Sergeant
you. Thank you very much. I love this partnership. I think that public-private partnerships are the wave of the future with everyone's limited resources. This is a very important project, and thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Looking at the amount of money going to the, the rehab type grants, is this going to mean that it will be 50-50 split between homeowners? There will be, and this program will get 100,000. I mean, help me with the division of the funding.
And that's a little bit clearer kind of in our next agenda item where I've got the breakdown of what we're spending. Actually, no, 75,000 of what we're proposing is probably going to be about a third of what we'll be spending for owner-occupied
Okay.
housing rehab for the year.
Okay. One of the interesting things, and I'm not sure where I saw this, but we worked with National Development Corporation on this. Is that right?
I sent everything to Libby, I think it's Al, is that the way you pronounce it? For her review. And she actually, I happened to run into her when she was here at the city and talked to her face to face about it. She thought that was a very innovative approach and one that she agreed with.
So you just had them consult sort of on it.
Yes.
And that's the National Development Corp that we're paying the $5,000 a month to. Is that right, David?
Yes.
And I believe one of their primary goals is looking at housing and looking at various projects for the, quote unquote, I think in their mission statement or on their website, the underserved. Is that pretty much, so this would fall under that, I guess.
But that's not, their contract with us is to vet companies. Their contract with us has nothing to do with housing.
To vet company, what do you mean?
Vet companies that deal with the city or that bid on the city's contracts. You could clarify that, Mr. Hales. I mean, it has nothing to do with housing.
But yet they consulted on this, which is about mobile home parks and housing.
Well, okay, go ahead.
I'm just looking at their website and their own mission statement.
Right. Well, I'm talking about their contract with us. Right.
And I'll just add that, again, NDC is very involved in urban renewal in both housing, but especially, even in commercial, industrial. They're very strong in the economic development. They are constantly looking at ways, and they have a lot more, I think, pulse of other partners when you talk about public-private partnership. And we have been exploring some of those with them. So we wanted to see not only was NDC familiar with this kind of private partner, and did they have any other maybe leads or contacts? And at this point in time, they didn't have any others, but certainly they're one that has national exposure to new, innovative, and I think creative ways to kind of help with both housing as well as economic development.
Their contract with us is to vet companies, right?
Pardon?
Their contract with us is to vet companies.
Primarily, yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, vetting companies, this would not be vetting companies. This would be consulting on mobile home assistance for homeowners, people who live there.
You were going to them just to get some perspective? Is that
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they also have some background in community development block grant. They do training on that as well, and they're
Oh, I'm sure.
knowledgeable of the
I'm sure.
regulations.
I mean, that sounds exactly like what their website and their mission statement indicates. So I think it would be good, though, possibly just to get an update on a continuing basis of what National Development Corporation is doing for us, considering that we're on a contract of $5,000 a month, just to, this is the first I've heard of anything they've actually done, so I think it would be nice to have that accountability.
Well,
Thank
just to clarify, there is a local radio station that's just basically been peddling lies about this, and so I'm just trying to set the record straight, and that is National Development Council with us vets companies, right? Whatever they do nationally is something different, and they've done lots of different things with us and for us over the last several months.
Okay.
But,
Well, then
they vet
a
companies.
list would kind of clear up some of this.
Right.
I don't know anything
Right.
about the radio station. It has nothing to do with my comments. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Milwaukee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. I think this is a very interesting project, and I'm glad that we're actually looking at helping people in the community who have a need, and a need that was not met before. So this is very nice. My question is, since this is a pilot, how will you determine, what's the benchmark for success? How are you going to determine that you've been successful and that it's worthwhile to continue over the years?
That's a good question. And generally speaking, when you set up a program, you do that with performance measurements in mind. Um, Honestly, my feeling is it's going to be a success if we can help any of the homeowners in the mobile home parks. Um, we have kind of an average of what we're looking for spending on each mobile home, and we know that we're not going to even get close to hitting the mark of serving all the need in the first year. And just to give you a little bit of background, um, there are about 2,000 mobile homes, and I think that I had that in the memo. And for comparison, that's only about 5% of the housing that we have here in Bloomington. 56% of our population live in single-family homes, and like I said, a little over 5% live in the mobile homes. So it's a much smaller demographic, very true. But I think, again, because of the income justification that most of them are low mod living in the mobile homes, and because we've never addressed it for years. In comparison, we're setting up right now, I think the low number that I set up was 845 today. So we've done, close to 900 single-family owner-occupied rehab loans in the last 40 years. Nothing for mobile homes for the most part. So again, I guess the long answer to your question is, to me, anything's going to be a success if we can get that money out to the mobile home parks and help some of their homeowners there.
Alderman Sage.
Thank you. And Sharon, thanks again for your presentation. And I will echo what Johnny said. I mean, anytime I feel like that we can leverage private and public partners, I think there's some value in that, right? Rather than the city trying to do everything. Some rather specific questions in no particular order. You make reference to, and I want to find the wording here exactly. And I was looking at it and just saw it. But this process for determining how which projects will be chosen. Can you take a couple minutes and kind of walk through that process and then explain how that will kind of be transparent and available for everyone to see going forward, which I think is probably, I mean, we want to respect privacy and confidentiality of folks that are participating in the project, but how do we make that review, selection, that prioritization process, create a line of sight for folks into that?
Sure. Well, like anything that we do with CDBG funds, we have to have data tracking. We've worked with construction charities to come up with an application form. Construction Charities is actually going to be the one marketing the program to all the mobile home parks, and folks will be applying to Construction Charities. So they'll be collecting a lot of the data, the demographics that we need, checking the income based on our income guidelines, and their board will be making the selection of those that show the most need that are income qualified. And Jim, I don't know if you want to come up and address that a little bit further, but certainly we'll be collecting data of any of those that we serve so that we can report back to what we did serve.
Well, and let me maybe pinpoint a little bit more clearly. Who will be the city of Bloomington? Who will be that point of contact for oversight of this program?
That would be us here in community development. Currently myself.
So as you're then enjoying your life in Tucson after December.
Phoenix.
Or Phoenix, I'm sorry. No, I thought it was Tucson, right?
Oh, Tucson? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
So, and assuming you won't be dialing in to participate in that, do we know who else, who might be the next person that will do that?
We're currently, I think, in the hiring process, possibly making an offer to an applicant. I do not have a replacement at this time.
Okay.
Carrie Snedden, the other community development staff that I work very closely with on our housing rehab and demolition projects, has been very involved with our conversations with the Snyders in this project. So I guess Carrie would be the interim.
Okay. All right. Some more questions, but go ahead, Jim. I think you probably wanted to say something.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. To address how we are going to establish who it is that receives service, the applications will be reviewed at our offices by our staff. The staff will put together their background, excuse me, the background checks, credit checks, so forth, verify income. Once that information is gathered, all that information is passed along to the board. The board will then use a point system that we have developed to establish who it is that will receive the services.
And I'm always a fan of metrics, and that's a good thing. I'm trying to fast forward here a little bit, because at some point, a City of Bloomington staff person is going to be standing back here at the podium reporting, maybe as Mboka suggested, how do we know this was successful? How did this work? That type of thing. So information like how folks were selected, the criteria that was used, the point system. There has to be line of sight around those things. It can't just kind of go up to the cloud at Construction Charities and then come back down, right, with a list of 10 projects or whatever
Correct.
that is.
Correct. Once we establish a list of potential people who will receive the services, we will bring that to the city and show them, get the input from them, and together we can make a decision as to further along the process.
Because again, someone will have to explain how effectively this worked, how things were chosen, and so that's part of my concern. So we absolutely have to create that line of sight before 6 or 8, 9 months, or before we come around next year to kind of review the next round of CDB, grants and projects. Okay. I was looking at page 59, and I want to make sure I have this right, and I think Sharon, you even alluded to it at the bottom of your staff report, where Construction Charities would receive 20% of the $75,000. And so we know that one metric, one way that that charities are measured, objectively, is kind of how much money actually goes to the intended folks, and how much is kind of consumed by administration, overhead, those types of activities, kind of those indirect costs, or if you will. 20% seems a little bit high. If you look at a number of other, charities, I mean, that, if we think of that in terms of like an expense ratio, 20% seems a little bit high, where perhaps a lot of groups try to target 10%, maybe 15%. Maybe some clarifying comments around what justifies 20% in this particular situation.
Well, the HUD requirements allow us to take the 20% from that money. That is what that is based on. It does not actually mean that we will be receiving that much money. We were going to get as much money as we can back into the public and back into the homes of these people. Whatever costs we have, whether it be 5%, 10%, we'd like to keep it down as low as possible. We have not established those figures as of yet. We simply went off the income that HUD allows from those funds.
Okay. Again, I think going forward, and maybe a heads up for Tom, that these will be some of the questions that we'll want to cover at some point in the future. You had 20%, you took X percent, how was that spent? That type of thing.
Right.
And that's consistent with a lot of the other groups that CDBG works with. Right? We look for salary, administration, some of those other charges. Okay. I think that's it. Thanks.
Alderman Lauer.
Mine's a little bit, I've got questions in terms of the big picture here a little bit, and differentiation between, a true brick and mortar home with a foundation versus the mobile asset. And just help me understand how the community as a whole would benefit. And obviously the CDBG funding really does benefit the community as a whole in a truly brick and mortar foundation type home, when we keep the home not only from a personal aspect, when we keep that family in the home and keep that home viable, but as a property tax paying individual, we actually see an appreciation of that property. We see an appreciation throughout the community, okay, when that happens, obviously. However, when we're dealing with a mobile home, that's probably certainly not the case
or certainly not the case as a larger percentage of appreciation. Can you help me there a little bit?
Um, and I'm speaking a little bit out of turn here because I don't know the specifics on how mobile homes, but I believe the mobile home park owner who owns the land does pay real estate tax on that. I know the mobile home individuals pay taxes on their mobile homes. Certainly they're members of our community, spending money in our community, citizens living within our neighborhoods and our areas. So to me, to differentiate totally between brick and mortar and them, to me they're still citizens that are demonstrating a need, that live within our community, that work within our community, and probably need our assistance just as much, if not more, than some of the brick and mortar.
I got that. There's a clear differentiation when you look at real estate appraisal values and tax appraisals, quite frankly. The city actually receives more funding from that tax-paying citizen in general on a brick and mortar home than they would on a mobile home. You know, case in point, if we had a mobile home park that had new entrants come in and fill some old spots that weren't there, okay? You bring a brand new mobile home in, you don't see the tax appreciation in that area that you would when you bring in new funding from, a home that is built with HUD funding or with CDBG funding or repaired with CDBG funding. There's a marked differentiation there financially. It's just an observation. Thanks.
Okay.
Just a follow-up statistic, Kevin, and I don't know if this holds any water with you or not, but was looking at some of the valuations of the homes that we have in our community. And this is based on the American Community Survey 2008 to 2012, which is actually based on the 2010 census. 22% of our homes right now in Bloomington are valued at less than $100,000, which I'm sure mobile homes would probably fit that category. 45% of our homes are valued at less than $150,000. And certainly that's kind of the price range or target range that most of our affordable housing is available. So we've got a lot of homes already that are in that lower price range that just need assistance overall, whether they're mobile homes or, like you said, brick and mortar. One of the other things to consider is, again, that we've done over 800 housing rehab loans. Maybe it's time to spread the wealth a little bit and broaden out a little bit, just for a year or two, to see what kind of an impact we can make.
Alderman Fruin, and then Hellman and Black.
Thanks. Sharon, just a couple comments. For what it's worth, one person, I find it interesting that we take the time to break this down by wards. It reminds me of street resurfacing, and in the past the police department used to break down crime by wards, and I think the police department stopped doing that because they measure areas differently. So I don't see that, personally, my own opinion, that any differentiation between wards means anything. I think where the need is, that's where the money should be allocated. I don't care what street it's on or what neighborhood it's in. With that said, the other point I want to make, I'm glad Alderman Sage talked about how this review process will take place. And it reminds me of all the money that's out there, private and public grants and so forth and so on, and of all the people that are letting money pass through. I love the partnership here. So here's my question. Do you feel like the owners of the mobile home parks are taking advantage of any money that might be available to them as owners, private owners, to help keep their property maintained?
George, I don't know if you've got any more information. George has worked a little more with the mobile home parks and kind of overall park improvement, whether it be water services, sewer services, things like that, than I have. Not aware of any funding that's available for the parks for general, I guess you'd say, infrastructure. Okay.
aware of the extent of the funding nor the extent of that we're taking advantage of.
Might be a question we challenge the mobile
Park
home
owners.
park owners.
Okay.
I think a lot of different organizations are surprised, that I didn't know that money was available. I didn't know that was out there. And the private-public partnership is a very good thing. I think I see a lot of good things here. Thank you.
Alderwoman Hallman.
Thank you. Some of my questions have been asked and addressed concerning success measures and program management. I had a question also about the 20% administrative fees. And if you have a business model already, and I guess this would go to, Jim.
Yes.
If you have a business model already, are you using 20% as in your business model, or do you have some background with other communities that you've worked with on what that would more realistically be?
We do not have a model as of yet. We are a fairly new 501c3. We recently got our 501c3 back in December of last year. This is actually our first venture with a municipality into this type of area. So I really don't have any information I can give you as to what our costs will be as of yet.
In your business model, you're using 20%?
No. The 20% that you see is just the allotted amount that HUD would allow.
No, I
The
understand.
maximum amount.
I understand that, but if you have a business model, what are you using for administrative costs?
The administrative costs will be overseeing the projects to make sure they're done on time. It'll be time involved. It'll be fuel. It'll be...
No, I understand what goes into
I'm
that.
sorry, I guess I don't understand the question.
I guess I'm making an assumption that you have a business model somewhere.
We're working on it. We're
Okay.
working on it. We do not have it established yet.
Alderman Black, last but not least.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, everybody who's spoken thus far. And Sharon, it's going to be sad to see you go, but it made such a big impact on the community. And just as one alderman just got started, such a high respect for you out in the neighborhood. So you're going to be missed. I just have a lot of times when we have these discussions, I often find that my questions are answered through the discussion. But this discussion, I'm getting more questions at this point. So when this comes back, I guess. Number one would be, I don't really know the market or how it works, and I couldn't really necessarily find anything in my research, but mobile homes, by definition, they're mobile. So can someone just take up, they get one of these, through this program, they get some assistance, can they just get up and leave? And then where's our return there? How often does that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a lot involved in securing a mobile home into a spot, putting up the skirting and securing and hooking up to all the utilities. Having said that, and a lot of times they attach decks and other things to them. But having said that, they are still, quote unquote, a mobile home, and they could unhook, undo, and pull away.
We have any data, maybe when we come back with this, to say, okay, we've had X number of homes come into the community, we've lost X number after that.
I can check on that.
Yeah, don't even know that immediately. So at some point too, like you mentioned that there was a current need for, these requests continue to come in for assistance. Any idea as to like what the most typical call would be for?
This last winter in particular, we had an awful lot of calls for frozen pipes, as you can imagine, underneath the mobile homes. Of course, furnaces, water heaters, roofs, windows. Those are usually the typical.
So, and I know this might be more for Jim here. What would a typical cost be for a frozen water pipe? What would that run? And they could probably run the gamut, I imagine. But if I'm in a mobile home, what am I looking at?
It could. It's going to vary on the construction of the unit itself, whether those pipes are back inside of the structure or if they're exposed. If they're exposed, it's a fairly simple fix. You're probably looking at less than $500.
Okay. So I guess that goes to my next question. Let's say that we go through with this program and then we get in there and we have we're doing some construction work and we discover some other major issues that we can't ignore. How do we deal with that sort of situation?
If that person has been approved for services, we can go ahead and approve and get those services taken care of at that time as long as there is funding to do so.
And if there's not?
Then I'd have to come back to the city, explain to them that this particular person needs these issues addressed, and it's possibly we can get to them in the future.
Sure. Okay. And I'm also kind of, I'm unclear as to the funding mechanism. So if and this is, I guess when this comes back, it'd be nice to see some different scenarios as to what people would be experiencing if they were to apply for this program. So let's say I fall on the lowest register of income. Do I put skin in the game with some financial, some dollar amount, whether it be some portion of my income that's appropriate, or would it just be kind of a grant, take it as is?
At this point, we're talking about grants
Sure.
because
Okay.
there is no way to attach a loan, a rehab loan, to a mobile home because it's like a car. So we
Yeah.
can't really attach a loan to it.
Gotcha. And then I wonder if we could at some point to address kind of the mobility issue. Is it legally possible for us with the grant to say, okay, if we give you this money, you have to stay in Bloomington for X amount of time?
That is something that we've kicked around and talked about doing, having them sign some type of agreement to that effect.
But then again, if the recoup of cost if they violate that would probably be next to impossible, if at all.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, and the 20% has kind of become a topic here. So I understand that you're kind of still new and feeling out to the 501c3. If you were to find that your administration costs come in, say, at 5% of the total projects, would that money go back into a pot to help with additional projects? What would happen in that scenario?
As far as 5% goes?
Well, you'd be leaving 15%. We budgeted 20% for administrative costs.
That additional 15% would then go back into the funding for additional work.
And that'd be part of the overall program then? Okay. And then, so your firm would then be taking all of, I'm sorry, I have a million questions here. Your firm would be taking all the applications and assessing yes or no on who's up or down.
That's correct.
So if someone were to be denied, would there be an appeals process? I mean, how would that be hashed out?
We're only going to be able to get so many homes done with the amount of money that we have. So with the amount of applications that I'm anticipating we're going to receive, they can certainly apply again at a later time, but the funding will be allocated to those who have the most need. There probably will not be an appeal process for the people who do not receive those services.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, we're way over time. Did you want to redirect?
Real quick follow-up. What would be the transparency for anyone who wanted to find out, for instance, what the criteria were for being accepted or being, I understand privacy, understand redaction of names and such, but what would be the transparency to find out exactly, what criteria, maybe why they were, if that's what they wanted to, and also the transparency for the cost of individual projects. How would a citizen go about researching or finding out or looking into, given that you're a private company?
If they came to us and asked for the cost of each project, we'd certainly be allowed to show them that. Our books would be open to them.
The cost of each project. What I'm looking at is a lot more detailed than that. So more beyond that. I mean, that's fine. I'm assuming you're a private company. You're saying you wouldn't have to disclose, I'm assuming.
Yeah, their personal information obviously would not be disclosed,
Right.
but the project itself, what we did, how we established the need that
Right.
those particular people had, that could all certainly be exposed to anyone who wanted to look at that.
Okay, well, I think, there is a question about, for instance, a project. Gee, why was $10,000 spent doing this? And I don't know, I'm not sure they could get every single item and every single thing on the bill for it. But again, you're a private, I respect that. I'm not asking you to, I'm not trying to lead the question. I'm just saying, isn't that a reality that we wouldn't know? I think it is probably a reality.
I mean, I think, are we?
Getting
There's some
detail on
information
the
that we're not
project.
going to get,
Right,
but
and I don't think we're going
is
to get
there
that.
anything that we couldn't get in terms of the expenditures?
As far as we are concerned, no.
Okay, so if it was, whatever, $500 fixing a pipe, $512.11, we'd know that.
Yes.
Right, but would we know the cost of the pipe, the cost of the labor, how it was all allocated and that kind of thing?
Yes, we would have that information from the contractors doing the work. We would have material breakdown. We would have labor breakdown. Yes.
So that could be obtained?
Yes.
Because that wouldn't be proprietary, no real reason why we'd have to keep that confidential. The income information from the applicant, perhaps, but other than that, if this goes ahead, if the council at some point decides that we don't have any more questions or whatever, if we decided to go ahead with this, it wouldn't be difficult for us to ensure total transparency minus the personal income information, right?
One thing too that I probably should have mentioned, we are going to be doing a subrecipient agreement with construction charities if we go forward with this. And within that agreement, it's lined out what they need to provide to us. It also includes monitoring of their files and records as we go along. And we're going to be working in concert with them, looking at the overall jobs, what they're costing. Carrie Snedden, our staff, is going to be involved every step of the way.
All right, thank you. Yes, City
I
Manager.
just wanted to mention again, and the reason we brought this and put it on the committee of the whole is just because it is new. It's being proposed as a pilot project. We didn't want to move it on to a regular agenda, unless there seemed to be at least majority support to keep moving in that direction. The other option we have is trying to get answers to these and bring this back on a committee of the whole. So again, I just wanted to make sure the council was clear. Because of this being new and different, we wanted to see, are you in favor of us spending more time and effort, maybe moving this on for a final vote in a regular meeting, or is there still, maybe
Okay, if
many
I
more
could just
questions?
to try to quickly kind of summarize, and since we're well over time, but I think this is a critical point, so we're going to, unless somebody insists that we just move on, I'd like to spend just a couple minutes to clarify. It sounds like we've got some very serious concerns and questions. What we're going to ask for a follow-up if we proceed. Concerns about transparency, concerns about other information. It sounds like we're also got some concerns about filling in the blanks on a business model as you move forward. Is there anyone who would disagree that we are cautious? Let's see. You can maybe put a little bit more work into this, but just because we're not saying no doesn't mean we're saying yes. That's it. Alderman Lau.
This might be just a little bit outside the box, but I'd like to hear from the Board of Realtors on this particular subject. I'd like them to take a look at it and see, we're taking the money out of one subset of individuals and putting it in another subset of neighborhoods. And where's our money best spent? Where are we getting the best bang for the buck? Mm-hmm. And I'd like to hear from them what they think, because they've got their finger on the pulse in terms of the valuation, as well as Steve Scudder, in terms of, the appraised value and how an appreciating asset versus a depreciating asset might affect the big picture here.
Right. I mean, I think that that's certainly one metric, and I don't know the exact figures, but when you first mentioned the question, I thought, okay, I think that's probably the case. The marginal dollars, if we're just looking at what money we allocate to improve property values, is probably best spent on a fixed residence. But then there are other metrics I think that we're thinking about here in terms of a broader social good. Do we balance that out, and how much do we do? And that's the question.
And I think that those folks would have those answers a little bit closer than we might as well.
Right.
So.
Alderman Sage, and then very quickly.
Sharon, what is the overall dollar value of the CDBG funds that you administer? I mean, everything put together, just a ballpark figure.
Are you wanting me to include continuum of care dollars and IDA?
Everything.
A little over $1 million.
Okay. And so 75,000 is clearly less than 10% of that, and probably close to 7.5% or something like that. So again, we're not talking about a giant share of funds here for a pilot program. I mean, there's good points raised, but I want to keep things in proper perspective, right? I mean, 7.5% is certainly more than 5%, but we're not talking about a fifth or a third of the CDBG money that we're administering here, right? We're talking about 7.5%. Thanks.
Okay. Is there a follow-up with people with lights on? Okay.
I was just going to say that I'm in favor of moving forward, just we need some more details on the overall scope and the project and get some more fleshed out kind of where that 20% is going, how it works, and I think that there's been a lot of questions here, so I'm not opposed to spending more time on it, just need some more detail.
Alderwoman Howman.
Quick question. We were talking about frozen pipes. That would be more of an emergency kind of thing. So whether to go along with Mr. Sage earlier, would there be maybe two applications, one for emergency work and one for maintenance?
You know, currently we kind of operate that way under CDBG for the single-family owner-occupied residence. We have an emergency application and kind of your regular run-of-the-mill. So certainly we could have a short-form application for those type of emergency. Good idea.
Bring for the pipes to.
Right. Good idea.
Thanks.
Alderman Fruin.
Very good discussions, very good questions. I think the staff sometimes walks away from these discussions wondering whether did we support this or not, and how much more work are they going to do, and when they bring it back, are they going to get approved? And so I guess I always came up with the thought that a pilot is a pilot, and give it a try and get through it for the first year, and if it's not working out, then you pull the plug and move on. But I hate to have staff get too bogged down and doing additional work and answering questions and the what ifs, and obviously they've done their homework, and I think it serves a subset of a population that needs help, just like we all need help. And mobile home owners perhaps don't have the money to buy a first-time home, and frozen pipes and winter conditions, et cetera. I think we ought to move forward with it and learn as we go. Give it a try.
Okay. I think you've got general directions, and we look forward to the fleshed out details then.
All right.
Thank you so much, and
Sounds
thank you again
great.
for your service, Sharon. Thanks. Thank you, sir. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move right along to a, again, related item. Item 5C, and Mr. Hales?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to emphasize the primary goal here for item C is to give the council, as you've requested in the past, an opportunity in the fall of each year, the chance to weigh in on some of your ideas for the CDBG budget for the following year. We are going to give you just a quick update of the current year, some of those programs. We thought that might be helpful, but that once again, as Sharon shares with you, some of our initial ideas of budget projects for next year, that is really what we're looking for. Either, do you like kind of what's in this preliminary list? Is there other priorities you would have? Would you prefer to see money spent more in one area or another? We're bringing this to you in the fall as you've requested to give you opportunities to share your thoughts at a very early stage in the preparation of the CDBG budget. So with that, Sharon, if you want to go ahead and give a quick overview of the current year and then talk about some of those projects being considered at an early stage for fiscal year 2016.
Sure. For color coding, the blue is the current year, the purple is the projected. And as you know, we were to get some of our budget numbers into finance a little bit earlier this year, so please don't feel like the 2015-16 is set in stone. It was just something that I put together, and again, we won't know what our grant amount is really until February or March, so we're doing this kind of in the dark, but it's something to work with. If we look at the blue comments, 2014-15, it gives you an idea of what was budgeted, and then with the budget amendment, the additional amounts that have been plugged in for the different projects or activities. I've also put on the back page a little explanation of what generates our carryover income from year to year, which we do have each year. And I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago that Finance put through our budget amendment to include the carryover for this year, and also it had it allocated out as we see on our sheet in the different activities. So going through, and also the projects that we've done to date for rehab and demo and our Howard Street curb and gutter project, those are all mapped out for you on the attached maps. We're about on pace for the year as far as our expenditures and our projects. A lot of our social services or public services, as we call them here, are ongoing, in other words, in process. I get all of my tallies from those agencies at year end, at fiscal year end, that I plug into my annual reports. So having said that, are there any questions on the current year projects and activities?
Questions? Okay, seeing none.
Okay, good. Moving on then to 2015-16, what we're proposing, much of the same. Took a little bit of a different approach philosophically for this next projected year, primarily because of transitioning and new staff. We are anticipating at least a new grant coordinator to be coming in to be taking over, who will be new, I'm sure, to HUD regulations and reporting and activities. And so I wanted to give them a little bit of breathing room and some time to get acclimated, to get trained. I'm hoping that Carrie Snedden in our office will be able to help with that transition some. But having said that, I've backed off of the typical single-family owner-occupied rehab, which he spends a lot of time doing, and proposing just to primarily do emergency grants that are needed next year, the broken water services, the sewer backups, the hole in the roof, that type of thing, because those housing rehab projects take so much of his time. And I've also plugged in again the Construction Charities Mobile Home Project, because again, they are primarily serving as the general contractor on that project, and it won't take as much time for Carrie, who will be spending a lot more time in the office helping the new grant coordinator. So that's kind of a philosophical debate, if you will, if you want to discuss on kind of backing off of some of the more time-consuming projects. And then also I put on the back page other limitations that we have to keep in mind as far as HUD regulations are concerned on the percentages that we have to abide by. We can't just plug all our money into demolition. I can't just plug it all into public services. There are limitations on all of those.
Questions, comments?
Mayor, if I could just ask Sharon to comment on the one thing that is new this year is the Black Elks Club. If you would comment on that. But then secondly, I just a comment to the council. We've talked for a couple of years about shifting and maybe putting a higher priority for a year or two of utilizing some CDBG money for economic development projects. And we put in here such as a West Side grocery store, something that would qualify. The city of Bloomington in the last 5 years has been heavily oriented to housing rehab, infrastructure improvements in low to moderate incomes where they would qualify. But I just want to bring that up again there is still talk about a possible West Side, residential TIF district, things of that nature. So, but those are still out there. Don't have much detail, but with that, would you just go ahead and mention that one and some of the interest that was brought to your
Sure.
attention?
We were contacted, a month and a half ago by the Black Elks Club. They were located out on Euclid, and they were, I believe, leasing that space. They are no longer in that space, and they're looking for a new place to acquire. We did meet them at one property that they were interested in acquiring, but it needed a substantial amount of work in our estimation, and felt like I could not bring a proposal to council unless they had some skin in the game as well, i.e. they would need the money to acquire the property and maybe help with some of the improvements. And they are not fiscally able to do that at this point. I think they were looking for assistance, possibly for acquisition and facility improvement. I gave them some options as maybe places to lease again, and they felt like they wanted their own spot to purchase and to call their own. And so they are still looking at this point on a place to locate. So I said that possibly I could put a placeholder in the budget for public facility improvements in the event they did find a permanent location.
Okay. If I could see who would like to speak to this or have questions so that I can decide, okay. Okay, Alderwoman Stearns.
Thanks, Sharon. I wanted to help me, if you could help me a little bit with this chart on the rehab loan grants. What page am I on? This is the 2014-15, and I see the 116,000, the rehab loan grants. Okay. 116,000, and then I see the budget amendment of, we're adding, just help me understand that 252,600.
Correct. You're correct.
Right. What is that? Are we adding? So we had so many applicants that,
No, that was the carryover amount from the
Oh.
previous year, either
Okay.
unexpended program income or unexpended grant money that was carried forward
Okay.
that we put in.
So we're actually going to have this year 252,000.
That's the
Because of the
252 plus
carryover.
the 116.
Oh, so we're going to
it's
have
the total of the 319.
Okay, thank you. And then, um, do we have all of our applicants approved? I mean, are we sure we're going to be spending all this, and are we still going to have applicants that won't get approved?
Yes. Well, they've been
Okay.
approved. We've got about 27 on the waiting list right now.
Okay.
So yeah, they all have been approved and files set up. They're just waiting to be up next on the list.
Okay. Well, I won't go into why we had carryover, but that's, I'm glad we have this kind of money for rehab loans and grants for low to moderate. I mean, that to me seems like the core of, the benefit to the community and what we've always done with the money, it seems. Now looking ahead though at the purple,
Mm-hmm.
let me see. So this coming year, what we're looking at is just 108. This year we're spending like 317. And next year we're looking at just 108. And then the rehab for the mobile homes would be 100.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So there I see a 50-50 split with just those funds for rehab, low, moderate, whether it be bricks and mortar or whether it be mobile homes, and that percentage, does concern me, because to me it's not, it doesn't even come close to reflecting the actual population of Bloomington in terms of the low to moderate income and where the needs are. Not saying we shouldn't spend any money on mobile homes. I'm not sure about the amount. And on the Black Elks Club, you mentioned, that they didn't have the money to acquire, and then we could. My concern here is, there are so many nonprofits in our community that do so much good work, and much of it is in a lower income, to those truly in need. I mean, Midwest Food Bank comes to mind, on and on. I could sit here, and I'm a little bit concerned or wonder, how do we open up this process to any eligible, nonprofit doing a very worthwhile service for low and moderate income and so on? How do we do that? How do we open that up so that people are aware? You mentioned you got a call from this organization, which is fine, but how do other organizations go about knowing that the city, public tax money could be given out to Midwest Food Bank, some other organizations? How do we do that?
A lot of our nonprofits has been word of mouth, one way, but we also advertise every year in the Panagraph and on our website on the action plan when we open it up for a public hearing for applicants to come forward. Certainly I'm open to other ideas and suggestions on how to bring others, and I've got a list of, I think, 20 other organizations that we've worked with in the past. So we're hitting a lot of those, the Boys and Girls Club, Lawrence Irvin Center, Western Avenue Community, Peace Meals, just to name a few.
Right, and I'm familiar. I see some of that.
Sure.
It just 40,000. We're spending 20,000 on piecemeals, and that goes throughout the city. 40,000 to one organization strikes me as a very large amount, in terms of percentage. But I think you've answered all my questions, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Black.
Thank you. And you've kind of asked me for my general thoughts on this kind of rough sketch of where we're at, and so here's mine. I would like to see continue to focus on aesthetics. I think that I'm a big proponent of the broken window theory, and I think this is a good way of us funding ways to make the neighborhood look more appealing. If that comes in the forms of sidewalks, if it comes in terms of infrastructure improvements or facades, I think that's great. In terms of helping one organization versus another, I think we should probably stay as far away from that as possible using these funds. I don't think it hurts to ask, but my opinion would be that if we do it for one, then we got to do it for everybody else. And there's so many good organizations in the community, like Alderman Stearns had pointed out. So, my preference would be that we keep the focus on some of the more aesthetic, facade and the grants to help homeowners. So, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much again. Thanks so much,
Great.
Sharon.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thanks. Moving right along, we move to item 5D. Actually is fiscal year 2015 overview and property tax levy presentation by the city manager and finance director. Again, we've got approximately 15 minutes and 15 minutes. We made up a little time, but then we're running a little bit behind, so if we can be as clear as possible, I appreciate it.
Mayor, just very briefly, the critical issue here is the property tax levy presentation. Tonight is the first step in the council ultimately adopting the 2014 property tax levy, which will have to be adopted in December. But as we've done in the past, we try to bring to you this topic in a work session to get your input. Certainly before we get into that, we just wanted to give you a quick overview of the current fiscal year, as well as just at a very high level, some of the issues, concerns looking into next year. Because the property tax levy is separated from our normal annual operating and capital budgeting process, we just wanted to give you a little update on some major issues, and then we'll get right into the property tax levy. So we'll go ahead, and Patty Lynn's going to take this part of the presentation. Patty, thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. As David said, because the property tax does happen completely outside of the budget cycle, I think it's only fair that we do try to put it into some context for you. And I have a very brief fiscal overview where I'll be just taking you from where we left off on the 15 budget, which I think we all remember was a very interesting and challenging time. But what council did was really adopt a hybrid approach to the budget. Sorry. And we had some challenges. This is where we first discovered, because we have better software and better a full staff in finance, we discovered our first blush at the structural deficit. Council reacted to that by getting feedback from its constituents and adopted a hybrid budget where both revenue was increased and expenditure cuts were made. A couple of those new revenues were specifically adopted for the police and fire pension funding for year 2 of about $1.5 million, and $1 million in local motor fuel tax was adopted for the specifically for the street resurfacing program. Those were 2 important initiatives that you guys did move ahead in 15. And also we adopted the new amusement tax, which was the only tax that we did add that would just go to general operations. In addition, we did add 4 new public safety positions, and they were the total cost of those positions is about $440,000. So that is a recurring cost that we will see going forward. In addition, before the budget, some solid waste fees were increased to try to address and cover the cost of services for the solid waste fund. At that time, we did have some other enterprise funds that were experiencing challenges, but we held because we were in stages of master planning and then the subsequent rate studies, which are still ongoing.
And Patty, if you would please, could you just share with them, we are tracking right now a growing deficit in our solid waste fund. Can you give the council an overview of what that number is and how that may continue to grow?
Sure. I was
just at a high level.
Just a little bit ahead of me, but that's okay. The solid waste program, as you may recall, for those of you that were here, there were different cart sizes adopted at different prices, and the higher priced carts are not as attractive as the lower priced carts. So what we're seeing is a little bit of a reverse incentive there, where folks are choosing the smaller and less costly carts. Therefore, the deficit that we were holding on at the end of 14 to kind of see how it would flow out in 15 with the first phase of increases. As you know, there's a second phase coming. Even with those both of those phases now, if the cart count stays the same, it doesn't appear that it will take care of the deficit issue. So we're still watching that, and we're still analyzing that, and we'll keep you updated throughout the process. But we will likely have to do a transfer from the general fund at some point, and I will follow up with that at the end of my presentation when I take you through the current year. So during the 2015 budget, we do a 5-year plan, and what you see before you is 1 year ago today, we were estimating a structural deficit that could grow as you see it here. There were varying projections out there, some about 3 million, some up to a little over 4, what you see there for 16. It really just depends on what assumptions we were using at the time. A year ago when we did this, other than the second phase of the utility tax increase, we assumed that most revenues would grow about 2%. We also had planned to restore cuts that were made to the self-insured funds, what Mike Nugent was just talking about, our workers' comp and casualty funds. We made a decision to not fund them as much as we were, hoping that the claims would come in better. We did accumulate a reserve in that fund of about $3 million, so we knew we had the money to cover the claims should the claims come in. And we're certainly not on a pay-as-you-go basis, but there was a concerted effort to cut and use a one-time cut from those funds. We were assuming in this projection that that $1.3 million would be restored. In addition to that, we assumed that the pension funding ordinance would be funded yet again. And each year we now know that we have about a $2.5 million normal salary and benefit increase per year. That would include pension and everything outside of workers' comp. And we also included here the $1 million for street resurfacing because we have the $1 million in there for the local motor fuel tax. So should these assumptions come true, and these are all agreed upon assumptions for when you adopt the FY16 budget, then this is what the deficit would look like. Certainly we can't adopt a deficit budget. We'll be adopting a balanced budget, and certainly the city manager and staff and us will be bringing you a balanced budget. But we wanted to take you from where we left off, kind of where we're going. And I will get to our current operations in just a moment. Some of the things, though, that were not included in that deficit that we just saw was the original budget. We had $4 million in street resurfacing. That is now really $1 million, all attached to the local motor fuel tax. There were many reductions made last year in an attempt to balance the budget. Those were not restored in that projection that you see. Other personnel and operating needs, such as culture change and any new staff requests that were cut last year, are also not included in that deficit that you see. And many, many of our citywide infrastructure needs are not included in that. This chart, as busy as it looks, is actually a 10-year infrastructure by master plan. And if I could call your attention just to the first line of the cells going across, that is the total of what each of the listed master plans requires by year going out, with the exception of Deferred Road. And if we were to implement all of these master plans that we have, we would be spending between $33 and $44 million a year on infrastructure. Those are our needs. Can we fund those needs? No. Did those needs happen overnight? No, they didn't. Can they be fixed overnight? No, they can't. But just to give you some perspective, I should mention that the total of all of that is about $388 million, and that does not include the water master plan, which we know is probably quite significant, but they have lots of funding in the water fund. And then there's a streets master plan and a bicycle master plan that are not reflected here. So it's just to kind of give you a pictorial of what we've been talking about, kind of that $400 million number that's been going around. It's kind of nice to see it here by master plan, and of course we'll be discussing that more. So during this point, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we are this year. Again, those projections were taken about a year ago. We're in the process now. We start our budget season in August internally. We've been working with the departments to not only project what our salary and benefits are for 15 and our other costs, but also where 16 and where 15 will actually end up. So we don't know. Is it likely that we'll be able to restore those worker comp funds and things of that nature? We're going to be looking at Mike's reports and figuring out what the best case scenario would be there. We'll be looking at salary and benefits. Maybe our projections will come in lower with any hope. We don't know. But until we get final numbers, will we probably still end up with a small structural deficit? My guess would be yes. But I think we're going to need some long-term planning to deal with that. I don't know if it will all be able to be fixed in 2016, certainly not the infrastructure. But I do think that if we keep that long-term vision, that we'll be able to get there. I should note that just in reviewing our revenues, we usually use a 2% growth on our revenues, which seems to be, a fairly conservative number. I will tell you that this year, and we only have 3 months of our sales taxes and our income tax and our home rule tax, but they're trending between 3 and 5% below what they were this time last year. Our utility tax is up because we raised the rates. Our food and beverages is trending about 2% down. Our hotel motel is about 13% down. I think that may have something to do with one outstanding customer that we talked about, which should repair itself. The franchise tax is up. Replacement tax is down about 12%. Building permits are down 16% over last year. Video gaming is up 100%. Video gaming, I think, would be on track to actually double its budget from $300,000 to $600,000. Who knew? We did not know, but a pleasant surprise. The local use tax is up 13%. Auto rentals are down. Packaged liquor is up 4%. Vehicle use tax is up 10%. People are buying cars still, so this is a good thing. The amusement tax and the local motor fuel tax, we received our first month of filings. The local motor fuel tax for 1 month came in at $206,000. Should that trend continue, and I'm guessing that August is a high motorist month, no inclement weather, vacations, etc. Should that continue, we would be on track to earn about $1.6 million instead of the $1 million for roads. That could be a real positive. I'm going to go out on a limb and say maybe net, maybe $1.4 million for the year. The amusement tax, however, is we are seeing it a little bit under. We've received $53,000 to date. We're on budgeted for $1 million. Comcast cable subscriptions have not fully implemented, as well as the Coliseum having a slow first quarter and a slow summer. So we have not yet seen, I would say, a very robust month in reporting. Keep in mind those two taxes started on August 1st. We received those tax filings in finance in September. So we really just have 1 month of data. But very impressed with the local motor fuel tax. So some positive news there. On the expenditure side, we've done about $637,000 worth of budget transfers this year that have come before council. Right now, that would lower, if the budget was to hold in all the other places, we'd be still within the 14 to 15% range of our general fund balance, but just wanted to let you guys know. And if I haven't missed anything, David, I will be handing over to Carla Murillo, our budget manager, who'll be doing the property tax levy for you. The property tax makes up 25% of our general fund revenue. So I want to make sure that you guys have that context as you go into the discussion of the property tax. On Monday, we'll be asking you, based on your feedback tonight, to adopt an estimate. That estimate is not permanent. It's just an estimate that hangs out there for 20 days and then can be adopted as early as November 24th, I think, or can go into December should you guys have any changes. But we wanted to make sure that since it happens completely outside the budget cycle, that you had all the relevant information.
Okay. Now let's open the floor up for some questions. Okay.
Questions?
Alderman Sage?
I'm sorry,
Okay. Alderwoman Stearns?
That's a lot of information, Patty. Thank you. But a lot of information. And I have just, I'm trying to reduce this down to what our citizens are thinking and caring about. And when I'm looking at the proposed levies for this year, I'm looking at what I think I'm seeing is we're looking at increasing our tax levy for sure. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's any.
No.
Okay, help me.
No,
all right,
I
that's
think
fine.
we're all talking
Just
about
show me.
holding the line on property taxes.
Well, I didn't even mention property taxes. I'm talking about the levy right now. I'm trying to get a feel for the levy. Only the levy. Thank you, Patty.
Carla Murillo will be presenting the property tax levy, but we are not proposing anything at this time. What we'll be doing is just talking to you about the levy, what it is, how it works, how
Right.
it shoots out the tax rate. And then
Right.
in the
Okay.
appendix, we did approve some information for you should anyone wish to see what an increase to this year's tax levy would do to the average citizen or the average homeowner.
Right.
We did include that information, but we are not asking or proposing any scenarios.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm interested in knowing, because there's so much here, so many years.
Bit in the appendix, just, I knew a lot of
just-
people were new
And I was focusing on this tax levy increase impact to taxpayers, looking at the $175,000 house and what a new bill would be. And I saw that last year our levy was $23,219,000,
Yes.
and I thought I was looking at, amounts over that as a proposed levy, but
Yes, we're not proposing that, but what that chart shows you is that because we've had some real estate growth and the EAV is up, you could potentially raise your levy without raising taxes.
understand.
I don't know if you remember 2012, when my first year before you, we had a similar situation, and I was just providing that information to you.
And it is interesting. It is interesting.
It could be a win-win, depending on how you look at it.
Thank you, Patty, for answering the question about the levy.
Alderwoman Schmidt.
To get back to your presentation, Patty Lynn, all of the revenue that you provided for
Yes.
us, the sort of what's up, what's down,
Yes.
was a great summary. I don't think it's in our package.
It is not in your packet.
I
We
would
were
love
just
to
putting
see
out.
that on a sheet.
It's in your September monthly report. That is just the city manager's September monthly report that's coming to you.
Okay,
And we
now
create
you
this-
know I haven't read it.
And we create this table, and I go back to it frequently because it is a good piece of information. If you would like this in the monthly financial report, I can add that for you.
No, now
Okay.
I have my pointer now.
Okay.
Alderman Fruin.
Thank you. Mayor, I think this is a question for you or the city manager, and maybe it's on point tonight, maybe it's discussion for another day, but I thought we did a marvelous job last spring working with staff on that chart and that spreadsheet we put together about potential expenditure cuts. And I think we had several scenarios where we might not have had a full 10 people voting. We might have had 8, 9, or 10 on any one column. Seems like my recall was that we had a number of things that were 5-4, 4-4, 4-3, and I just wonder, are we going to resurrect that? There's a lot of good work that went into that, and I think there's some things that we can look at on the expenditure side. It looks to me like it's unfinished business.
Right.
And where does that fit into?
Well, I think the priority budgeting will help us do that. If you would prefer to do both, you want us to go back to that, I mean, absolutely. I think anything that can get us to a consensus of a workable budget, I think is very, very much appreciated. The city manager is nodding as well. Absolutely. Thank you.
And Mayor, I just might add too that priority-based budgeting does incorporate a lot of citizen input. So, and that's coming up next after this, so that's the other added feature of that. And the calendar schedule would have the council to get that right around the time you get the city manager's proposed budget, so you can take that fully into account as you make any budget, changes or decisions over that 2-month period.
And obviously, we don't want to get too far into the priority budgeting, but that would help us understand where our citizens are coming from, what our values are, and we give, hopefully, as clear direction as possible to the city manager as he's developing his budget, and then in our negotiations as we move forward, with this. Certainly, at the very least, we know what we're dealing with here. Patty Lynn's given us some great information and numbers. We know this far in advance of what we did in the last cycle. I mean, at this point, about 3-4 months in advance of this kind of good information. Not that this is surprising to us either. We were kind of surprised with the structural deficit information toward the very last few months last time, and obviously we know that, and we're going forward, and we are hopefully, had we, unfortunately, our retreat may be a month or so delayed, but I think we would have could have gone through some additional exercises through priority-based budgeting and discussions there that I think would have helped us. And so, anyway, Alderman Lauer.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just so I've got it clear in my mind and everybody else, especially those that are new here, as compared to the 13 budget, the 14 budget that we adopted reflects $2.6 million in expenditure cuts, which were cuts to the proposed increases over the 13 fiscal year. Is that correct?
They were cuts to the city manager's proposed budget.
That's correct.
Yes.
So
Yes,
they were
those are net
cuts
cuts.
to the increase to the proposal as compared to 13.
Well, but they weren't all increases. No.
In the city manager's proposed budget that he presented, council further cut $2.6 million.
Cutting
Net
from
cut.
the increases. Almost,
Not necessarily.
almost across the board.
You're cutting
Yes,
from
almost across the board.
You're,
Yes, we were.
well, but not everything that we cut was an increase.
I understand that.
But you're cutting from the proposed budget that was presented. It didn't mean that doesn't really mean
So
that
from
you're
the
cutting from
hybrid
the
budget,
increase.
if you're looking at the bottom line, we cut 2.6 from the increase over 13 fiscal year. Yes.
Not necessarily. Now,
Well,
again,
if you want to get down to, line items, we can do that, Mayor, but I don't think that I'm going there right now. I'm just trying to define the fact that for the audience and for those that haven't been here, it was a $2.6 million cut from the proposed increase over 13 fiscal year.
Peddling, do you want to?
I see where you're going with that, and it's a little bit, the cost of, and as we're doing things right now, salary and benefits, they go up.
Understand
The
that.
cost of doing business goes up.
Understand that.
So when the city manager proposes his budget and his balanced budget, last year, there were additional dollars for new staff and things that were added that was a reflection of the department head's needs. Those things were cut, with the exception of those 4 public safety positions. So I guess it's all in how you want to look at it. Those costs are real. We have to find a way to deal with them.
Sure we do.
They're going to revive themselves in 16 here. A lot of things were cut: seasonal, temporary employees, park and recs, overtime. The list is quite long. Are those?
For actual cuts, not cuts and increases.
Well, they're cuts in what those costs are to keep those things. They weren't necessarily.
We didn't keep them.
Right. We didn't keep them, and there were a lot of cuts that I think that were they ads. I would. It is debatable, but I understand where you're going, and certainly the budget is going to go up every year. That's the rub. How do we deal with that?
The reason that I ask that is
Yeah.
because when we look at the disposable income available to the average citizen, that has not increased. As a matter of fact, we're looking at an appreciable decrease. Okay?
In income?
Yes, sir. When you take those mid and high level positions from our major employer out of the equation, your median family income, your median income goes down.
I don't know that, well, we'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Because everything that I've seen is our median income is going up at about the national rate of 1.9%. But anyway, we can do that. Take a look at that, and we can clarify. Because again, it's what the evidence shows, not what the rumor mill says, right? Yes, Alderman Black.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Patty Lynn, for the presentation. I remember it was at the end of April where there was some discussion about moving towards multi-year budgets. Is that something that we can either take more advantage of? I know Munis had said it had some software capabilities to go towards that.
We do actually project a 5-year budget each year. You adopt really year 1, and the rest are projections, and we do have those numbers, which is what you're looking at now in that chart. You can potentially adopt a biennial budget. I mean, your ordinances can be changed to do that. It's just a little bit difficult. As you can see, the numbers are just very fluid. They're not as cut in stone as everybody, thinks. They're moving every day. And so it's not necessarily a bad idea. I've seen it done. It's just a matter of how most of our revenue is so elastic. You'd have to adopt, I think, a very, very conservative budget to be able to do a second year adopted.
If I could just clarify that, in that, if I'm sort of agnostic as we do this, but if we do go to a biannual budget, I think we need to change our fiscal year. And the reason for that is when we were all elected, those of us who came in, if we had a budget that was in place, we'd have a budget for 2 years of our term, half of our entire term, that a previous city council and previous mayor and others had proposed. And so if we do go down that path, I would suggest that we can have our fiscal year at any point. It's unusual to have it, May 1st. So, maybe we make it at, like the counties, coterminous with the calendar year or something. But just as we go down that path, anyway, thank you for bringing that up.
Yep.
You follow up?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Any other questions for, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you, guys.
Oh. And Carly, come on forward.
Good evening, everyone.
I'm going to present to you a brief overview of our 2014 property tax levy. Basically, property tax has three major components. The first component that would affect how much a taxpayer pays, excuse me, is the dollar amount requested by the city or the other overlapping districts. The second most important part is the equalized assessed value, and that's 1/3 of any property's market value. If you take the dollar levy requested by the cities and the other overlapping districts and divide it by the final EAV, that'll give you your tax rate for the year. City of Bloomington shares this property tax with 7 other overlapping tax districts, the largest of which one is School District 87. We also share it with the Public Library, McLean County, HCC, Benward, the airport, and the township. As you can see, the city gets 13 cents of every property dollar that we receive, and as I said before, the school district receives the lion's share of it at 61 cents. If we're looking at direct tax rate, out of the 8 of the 9 past years, the city of Bloomington has either decreased or increased by less than 1% their tax rate, with the exception of the 2009 tax levy. If we look at where that dollar goes, we see that 50% of that dollar goes to pension-related expenses, 20 other percent of it is directed towards the library, and then the last 29% of it is for police and fire protection and other operating expenses. Here we have our proposed timeline for both our 2014 tax levy and our proposed budget. As you can see, as Patty Lynn said before, next Monday we're hoping to bring forward our estimated tax levy. And then you can see the 3 dates that she had talked about that we have for options of adoption of the tax levy, with December 15th being the last date available for us to adopt the final tax levy. On February 23rd, we hope to bring you the proposed 2016 budget. As Patty Lynn said, we have been working on it since August, and we actually worked with the department starting in September this year, which is much earlier than last year. And we're looking at, hopefully this week, starting to actually be able to get everything in and do an internal review and then get back with the departments at the beginning of November. March 8th is a proposed tentative budget workshop with the City Council, and April 20th is a possible adoption of the FY16 budget. Between February 23rd and April 20th, that leaves us 8 weeks for public engagement. And as you saw on that budget timeline, I saw that a lot of you were looking at, there's other dates that come in with the priority-based budgeting and some of our tie together of our internal with the city and the community. In the appendix, you'll find some other slides that give a little more historical trend. And as Alderwoman Stern said at the very end, you can see that our preliminary estimated EAV is a little less than 2% up from last year, but we still got a couple months to go where they'll go through the appeal process, and we won't know probably our final estimated until the end of December, beginning of January. In the past, usually our preliminary has decreased, so we'll keep watching it, and I do get updates. I can usually ask them about every 3 to 4 weeks from the assessor's office as the appeal processes come forward. And I'm open to any questions.
Carla, do you want to go to that last chart, that tax levy increase impact taxpayers chart? Because I think that's where we want to stop, and I just want to make a few comments in regards to that one. As you look at this particular, chart, as you can see, if the council consensus was we want to keep the tax levy very similar to what it was last year, then it's interesting to point out that actually that would convert to an actual tax decrease for the average homeowner by about $15.98. And then as you see, if the levy goes up, we could, and if it was, say, go up by $500,000, it still would be a property tax decrease for the average homeowner of about $1.41. Do you just kind of want to comment on why is that the case? Why would the levy going up $500,000 still be almost flat or just a little decrease for the average homeowner?
If we're looking at keeping the levy pretty stable and flat,
as long as you're increasing your denominator or your preliminary EAV, as it gets larger, you get more leeway, so your taxes will come down. If that EAV does decrease, then we won't quite get the cushion that we have there, and it'll change, and we're hoping that it won't decrease too much, but only the appeal process will know, because we don't know how many people will actually appeal and when.
And I think it's not so much a question for Carla as it is for David. But if you want to answer, Carla, feel free.
You bet.
I see the date for the adoption of the budget as April 20th, and remembering last year, that was it seems that it was very close, and I know we had a couple of, misses, here and there. And to you, is there a possibility to move that up a little bit so we have more wiggle room?
I think the reason that we choose towards the end of April is it allows us the most time between the proposed, which usually, even if we got it out 2 weeks earlier in February, that would still not allow us a whole lot more time. I think 8 weeks where everybody gets to see it allows us enough time if we go to the end of April. And we do have one more council date, if I'm correct, in April, that if we don't get the April 20th, that we can. But if we move it back, then that cuts down our time for review and public input and for your review also.
Alderman Sage.
Carla, wanted to take a second and just recognize your good work here starting on or around page 78. I was sitting here thinking again, I think the first year I was on the council, I think all we had was the dollar bill slide. And,
That's a popular one.
So you maintaining the oldies but goodies. And here's just a couple of comments. I just really like the way that you create line of sight here for how this process works. Maybe one suggestion, where you have identified the taxing bodies. Isn't it accurate to say that would Bloomington property owners, some would be District 87 and some would be Unit 5, right?
No, I do not believe so, but I'll defer that to Patty. I believe that we are only District 87.
What?
Yes.
No.
Is that not true?
No.
In
Yeah,
the
might even be
taxing
more in
mode?
Unit 5 now. No.
Yeah.
I didn't think we
So
received the Unit
Yeah,
5.
we have citizens in both. Some are in 87, others that are in Unit 5.
Right. So just in terms of making sure that folks understand
clarify that.
that if they live in Bloomington, but they're in a Unit 5 school district, they have parts of their property tax dollars that are channeled to Unit 5.
Yes, I will check on that. I am not sure. I'll be
Wherever
honest
they
with
live.
you.
If they live in Unit 5, their taxes go to Unit 5.
Yeah, that's and so again, just kind of want to clarify
No, that's a
that
very good point.
a little bit. Something else I like that you've done too is I like page 82, the circle there that shows exactly where the property tax dollars go. That's a question that always gets asked. And so I like the clarifying that you've done there. Something else I like too is on page 86 where you talk about the cycle and you talk about, the dates, but more importantly, who does that? Because again, the questions I fielded over the years around property taxes are always, they always seem to center around these two things. Folks that don't understand how the assessor works into the process, and that's a separate elected office. And so I appreciate that you've kind of highlighted that's a real good thing. And then the other idea being, and again, you've called it out in the earlier slide, identifying all the taxing bodies, because people say, well, you say you cut your property tax, but my property taxes didn't go down. Well, that's because there are these 7 other groups, if you will. Right. And if the county goes up or the airport goes up or the water district or Heartland or any of those other ones, chances are the overall property tax bill is going to go up. And so I like the way that you've kind of started to create some line of sight there for folks to better understand it. So this is good work, so thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Stearns and Black.
Thank you. I believe, and this is, of course, is not your dealing with the levy, but our assessor at one point was able to give us EAV for District 87 and EAV, divided out that way because they have it in obviously quadrants, so they know. But clearly, assessed valuation is an inexact science, and clearly there's many, many, many variables, and one of them is, frankly, opinion, um, in terms of the assessment process. So the EAV is very flexible and has a huge effect on, where the rate goes, where the taxes go, and how it all works together. Um, but, good to have the timeline and good to know how these three factors are going to work together, even though they're still an unknown.
Correct.
And I think for anyone interested in looking at the AV in 87 and Unit 5, I do believe what you will see is a fall of the assessed value in 87 and a rise in 5. And that's, to me, that's very concerning and it very reflective of the kind of care we take of our District 87 inner city and what happens to property values in that, city core. But thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Black.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm reminded of when we went through the budget process last year, and we were looking at different ways to fill the gap. And one of the things we wish we had come back to was the property tax levy. So we'll want to keep that in mind for this budget cycle. My question would be, and you don't have to have an answer now, is I'd be very curious to know if we were to wipe out all of the other smaller taxes, the amusement tax, the motor fuel tax, what would the the tax levy have to go to compensate for those? The reason I'm asking that question is I've gotten a lot of feedback from people who would rather see us move our funding stream through property taxes instead of those smaller taxes, just as a way to create, number one, a clearer line of sight in some of the older neighborhoods, the cost it takes to move services, down a block where you hit, 15, 20 houses versus, in some of the newer subdivisions where you hit maybe 2 or 3 houses in the same distance. There's some concern there. So I'd be very curious to see what that would look like. Even thinking about the last budget cycle here, if we're looking at using this data here, and this is kind of a rough estimate, we were looking to fill up about a $4 million hole, as I recall. You'd be looking at $144.19 for your average taxpayer, but I'm not sure how much that would be in difference to what they're paying in addition to with, amusement tax and motor fuel and all the other ones that we've brought up. So I'd be curious to see what that would look like as we move forward.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Mr. Hales.
Mayor, let me, and I do want to just clarify, we did have this handout, and I think the only difference here is you adjusted the median market value of a home, correct? So is this probably what we want to focus on? 153,000 is the current median market value of the average home. What I'd like to recommend, and again, it's tonight's for discussion, but I think there's a lot of value in the council considering that line where we're looking at a property tax levy of $23.7 million. Yes, that would be a $500,000 increase, but for 2 reasons, both related to public safety, I think there's some value in looking at that. Last year, when you chose to raise revenue to fund the police and fire pension funding policy, that got us through not only one full year, the first year, but it almost got us, I think, 75-80% through the second year, which means in fiscal year 2016, we still will be short, and Patty, if you can help me, I think we're right around about $400,000 needed to complete full funding of our police and fire pension funding increase in the second year. What was that number again?
We're about $350,000 short. If you recall, the utility tax was raised in a way that it covered most of that cost, but we're about $350,000 short of the second year of full funding of the ordinance. So certainly this property tax presents an opportunity to add a little money with maybe a neutral impact to the taxpayer after appeals. So it could be a nice opportunity to fill that gap. It's not a large gap, but it's an opportunity.
Just to clarify, if we have that option, if you have the typical house, your taxes will actually still go down about $1.25, $1.24.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to leave a little wiggle room for the tax appeals process on that EAV, and you went with the 250 or 300,000 or something in between the 350, I think it would probably be you'd be safe to say cost neutral.
Questions on that?
So once again, I think that's something to consider because again, we are just a little short in year 2 of our 5-year plan to double our annual contributions to the Police and Fire Pension Fund. It's a way, and as you've seen earlier, the property tax is a major source of funding of those police and fire pension plans. So it's something to consider. And I think as we've been looking at this staff, we thought this could be your dedicated revenue source to fill that 350,000 plus or minus gap in fiscal year 16. And then we wouldn't have to wait to come up with the third year funding until sometime, next year as we consider fiscal year 17
And
and
how
beyond.
soon, just in terms of, as you're preparing this, how soon do you and staff need to know council opinion? I mean, we may have we've kind of run out of time, we'll have a little bit of discussion now, but when do you need to know?
I think if you could just give us any input tonight or in the next few days, certainly on the 27th, we will bring to you a recommendation for a tax levy, and hopefully that night you can either approve it or change it to where is the majority position on an estimated property tax levy for 2014. And as Carla mentioned, that's not the final, but state law requires the governing board to adopt an estimated property tax levy so that we can go through the publication, notification phase, so forth. And then the last thing I'd just mention too, since October is the end of the half year of the city's fiscal year, 6 months, as soon as we can into November, and it'll probably be towards the latter part of November, hopefully we'll be sharing with you not only actual financial performance for the first half of the year, we'll also be updating our projections of revenue for the remaining 6 months. That will be another, I think, critical piece of financial information for the council to consider before you actually adopt the final property tax levy, assuming, that may have some impact on your final decision.
Okay, if I could just then ask for some quick reactions. Nothing final. We're actually well over our time for this section, but obviously it's critical, so all of
Yeah,
the sage.
and David, I just want to make sure that I'm clearly understanding what you're suggesting. If we set the levy at the 23.7,
right,
okay, then that causes 3 things to happen. First, the property tax bill, the city's part of the property tax bill remains, I think, relatively neutral, I think is the word that Patty used.
Yes.
Is that correct? But that additional increase from the levy would be specifically targeted to police and fire pension.
Exactly.
That group of first responders, if you will.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
first responders, pension funded, property tax bill, the same, at least the city's part of it.
Yes.
At the 23.7.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks. Now, speaking of budgeting, we're now going to our priority-based budgeting model. And we have approximately 15 minutes here. And again, when we do go to our retreat, we're going to be following up with this a little bit more. This is, once again, presenting our framework and timetable. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Hales.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you know, previously I sent out by email this updated so-called comprehensive project description by Bernie Siraki. And I'll just draw your attention in the interest of time to the timeline. And as you see, this is a very aggressive timeline, which would include not only sending out mail surveys by the end of next week, it would also call for mid-November having an online budget exercise for any of our citizens, business owners to go and to utilize. He is recommending a citizen focus group. This would be probably a day-long session on maybe a Saturday for citizens. I think in Lincoln they had upwards of 50 citizens who participated in that. And then continuing with some department heads meetings in January with a final report to the council by mid-February. So you would have all this input, this data, the results of the process available to you. I will just throw out again one just caveat. I did have a chance to give Rick Hoppy a call today because I just wanted to get just a recap again on how long it took the City of Lincoln to kind of get into priority-based budgeting. Their kind of initiation into this really was over a couple of years. And I don't know all the particulars, but again, I just share with you, I think we all have the same goal. We want a process that is going to be meaningful. It's going to have a strong level of commitment to utilize this, have this, something valuable to the city council. And two, we do have a lot of work yet before us, especially at the director level and senior management staff, because there is still the establishment of the various programs and services, putting cost data to that. So what I want to make sure you understand is we have a lot of issues as staff to deal with over the next couple of months. And it's our intent to continue to do everything we can to meet these. But again, just like we see in a lot of projects, and who knows, we have one we'll be talking about tomorrow night that was sprung on us. It required a lot of diversion of staff time. But so this is their, very aggressive timeline. So we just bring this back to you for your review consideration. But things are continuing to move ahead with Mr. Siraki and his team, as kind of pointed out here in this project agenda.
And just to clarify, obviously, this isn't going to necessarily make the tough decisions for us, but it helps us to clarify choices, excuse me, and if there is a consensus, or at least a majority, then it helps perhaps us to move forward with this. Alderman Lauer, start with you.
Yeah, well, the basic premise of setting priorities is paramount, I'm sure. And I've been talking about it as well as Mr. Sage since I've been here. But who is setting the priorities and how those are being set, and who exactly is going to be making these decisions is a huge question mark in my mind.
It's us.
Well, I would hope so.
Right.
But if you have this small subset of citizenry that's going to have the input, and then we're going to be making those decisions based on what they're telling us, who's choosing the citizens and how are they making those decisions? That's the problem that I've got.
I think that's just one piece of
Well, it's a big piece of the puzzle that I am very uncomfortable with.
The piece, you mean the survey?
Not just the survey, but, as an alderman, I'm already very engaged with my citizenry. And not just in Ward 1, but across the city. My family's been here many, many years, and I hear from old friends that I haven't talked to in sometimes 40 years. Case in point, one of my father's good friends from high school called me up. I hadn't talked to the guy since I was a kid. And we were discussing some of these issues. I realize that some of us don't have that ability, and we weren't necessarily elected. We were appointed, and so we haven't had that engagement. I understand that. But, how are all these things weighed? That's my concern. I'm in touch. I'm hearing from my folks. I know what their priorities are, and I'm afraid that we're going to skew those priorities based on just a very small subset. Just my opinion.
Sure. Alderwoman Schmidt.
I want to express, and maybe it's some of the same concern, Kevin. I reacted actually rather strongly to the idea of a day-long focus group meeting. I have no doubt we're going to find 50 people who would show up, but I'm not sure that they're going to be a cross-section, and I'm thinking about people who are working on weekends who may have second jobs. And I want to be sure we're hearing from a cross-section of the economy, basically, of Bloomington. And I also want to make sure that the feedback that we get is not just online. I want to figure out a way, because, anybody who's looked at internet capacity will tell you that west of Main Street, it goes down. People don't have internet in their homes. We're not going to hear from the cross-section, and that would be, that I would be very, very worried about that. So I want to make sure we deal with those things.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we do is anyone, we take multiple inputs, right? I mean, if you can have your ear to the ground, obviously we all want to have our ear to the ground. Might have some information from a survey that might help give us a check to whether or not our ear to the ground is really as sensitive as we hoped. So no one thing would dominate. At the end of the day, we make the decisions, right? It's what we were elected to do. Alderwoman Stearns.
Well, that may be that at the end of the day we make the decisions, but I completely concur with what Karen has just said about a cross-section. And I don't know what part of town, I don't like to stereotype any part of town at all, but I don't know what part of town, but I do know a very significant amount of my constituents, for instance, are frankly people like myself who are elderly. And I'll just say that because I'm not trying to draw any stereotypes there either, but they don't have internet, and even if they do have it, they don't care to, they just don't want to go online. Their way of communicating is looking at people, talking to people, maybe writing a letter. I still get letters from some of these people, and they're wonderful letters. But I assure you they are not going to go online under any circumstances. So I can draw this out. I can also say 50 people that are willing. I mean, I'm asking myself, okay, yeah, there's 50 people. Who are those people? They're not the working mother. They're not the single parent. They're not the person who's working the 2 and 3 jobs to hold it together. I assure you of that. But do they have an opinion about the budget and the finances and the tax? Oh, you bet they do. And I believe that is my job to understand, and I believe I do understand where the priorities, like Kevin, the emails, the phone calls, the people that stop me in the street and want to talk, which is great. But to say that we're going to have a day-long summit, to say that we're going to have an online survey, I've been asking for another mail-out survey in Bloomington for years because we had one, I believe it was 2007, and I thought it was extremely interesting. It went out with water bills. I think it was very random. That I totally concur with. I think a survey in the mail, might, even that is a subset of people who will answer it. But to assume that we're going to get a cross-section from a process like this, I'm sorry, I respectfully disagree with that. And I think that if someone did sit for a day, 50 people sat, who am I then at council to say, oh, no, I don't agree with that? I mean, it just, as Kevin used the word skews the process. Okay, I'll go on that. I'm not going to go against data like that. I mean, wow, I really admire somebody that'll sit for all day and hash out with a bunch of people that don't even agree with them. But I don't think those are a cross-section at all. And I have a huge problem with this process. I want to review again how much we are paying these consultants, I'm not sure, and what our actual engagement with them is and where we are in this process. But this is not something that I feel, helps me or allows me to fulfill my responsibility as an elected official and a representative. Thank you.
I think the answer to the first question, one of the questions is, at this point, we're not paying them anything. It's zero. Not free. Absolutely free.
It's totally free.
I think we've been talking about this for 5 months. I think it's been free all along. Expenses, yeah. I mean, I think we might have taken him out to lunch.
Well, call me crazy, but in my world, there's no such thing as a free lunch. In business, it just doesn't happen. So I guess I'm just really surprised and I'm confused that any busy professional person would really donate hours and hours of their time for free. But okay,
well,
thank
that's not
you.
what they are. It's a university, it's a graduate school, it's a graduate program. They're looking for cities that are non-Chicago cities to get experience. And so they're doing survey research, they're doing economic analysis. I thought this was clear, but apparently not. Alderman Sage.
Yeah, and I think that was a point I was going to reinforce, Mayor, so thanks for doing that. And again, I think part of the process here is there's a three-pronged approach, right? There is a mail survey that's been clearly talked about from the beginning. There is an online survey, and then there is a personal engagement aspect of this. And so those seem to be, I think, cover a lot of the major touch points that we have with our citizens. And again, I guess, comment or ask the question. We went through the process last year during the budget, and there was a significant amount of pain for us. And so my question is, for those who aren't in favor of the priority-based budget process that's been used in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that we're trying to leverage here, and to David's point, we're not going to solve this problem all in 1 year. My question is, what is your alternative to the process? We're developing a process that seeks to engage the maximum number of citizens in 3 different ways. And yeah, there's some details. I mean, we don't want to just bring in 50 people that agree with, 2 aldermen or something like that. I mean, yeah, those are fair questions. But again, we're now coming up on 4 or 5 months removed from our last budget process. We're trying to move forward with a priority-based effort. And if that's something that doesn't seem workable to you, then what is your suggestion, I guess? And I'd ask that rhetorically right now, because we'll talk about that some during the planning session that we have.
One of my suggestions would be that we further engage those that haven't been here in the past and further engage the rest of us.
Okay, well, we're going to go forward. The devil's in the details. If you have any idea about how we do that, then we're open to hearing. Kevin?
I think we all need to be more involved.
Okay. Then
We need to have an honest discussion we didn't have last year, Mayor.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
And if you have specific ideas about how we have whatever an honest discussion is that you're mentioning, then let's do it. Okay, absolutely. Okay, we're going to go to people who haven't spoken yet. Alderman Black and Alderwoman Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just my first reaction is I think that priority-based budgeting is a good idea because, I think a lot of our discussion is going to be framed by the phone calls that we get and that we received during the last budget cycle. And what was very surprising to me in that discussion was the number of people who not only were asking us to make drastic cuts, which is a fair point, but also those who were asking us to make increases in services. And as I said then, and I still do to people who call me up now, is if they want to have increases in services, how do you want to pay for it? And if you want to have cuts, what would you like to see cut? And I think that this is a very concrete way of setting metrics for us to, where's your comfort level? On the west side, I hear a lot of questions about, well, we need to have more police out there. Okay. How many would you like to see out there? To what cost would you like to pay for that? These are the questions that I think that this will address over time. As for the day-long sessions, I think that's a pretty big commitment for someone to make. I would really like to see, and this is my how, that aldermen were to take the lead on a couple of sessions, maybe 2 hours max, where we lead a specific question that we're trying to answer. Maybe we have a member of staff there, administration, to kind of help us out, but I think it's incumbent upon us to engage with the public in as many ways as possible. I like this too because you leave out March and April, so we had some success with some public meetings, neighborhood meetings. I know that I went to Alderman Lauer and Stearns, and then Karen, David Sage, and I did one as well, and that was very successful. So we have some flexibility, but my one suggestion would be that for the individual engagement, that we would have aldermen step up and take on a quick discussion that's very targeted, pinpointed, to get some good feedback from different groups of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Schmidt.
And just briefly, I want to make sure that I'm being clear. I'm not opposed to this. I actually think it's a great idea. It puts into our routine the citizen's voice in a way that we have not had before. And I really like what Scott is suggesting here. I think the town hall meeting that Dave Sage and Scott and I had was invaluable, and it was 2 hours of it was a listening tour, and it was really, really good. I'm trying to just refine this so that it makes sense for this community, but I want to say thanks to Dave Sage and David Hales in particular for helping us kind of put some structure around this.
Right. And regardless of whether or not we go down this path, that doesn't mean that we have to keep all of these pieces. If we go through this and we say, hey, the survey part was pretty cool and this other part was good, but we don't, the day-long stuff now, the people who were willing to stay all day long had access to grind, and we didn't find that as valuable, then that's fine. We certainly are not wedded to anything. And at this point, it is an exploration. It's just a way for us to try to get more input, more diverse input than the fairly small number of people who will fire us emails and call us. And they're almost certainly not a representative sample of this whole community. I mean, for none of us, right? I mean, neither of our specific wards or where we're coming from, there are certain people who are more likely to contact us, and they aren't necessarily a reflection of our overall community. And I think many of us have pretty much said that. So frankly, as from a methodological standpoint, the group that the piece of evidence I'd be most suspicious on would be the focus group, right? But usually when you're in a focus group, you're not looking for a point estimate. You're not looking to say, okay, 60-40 this way, 70. If you do that, focus group is not what you're after, right? A focus group talks to you about, it's more of a qualitative analysis. What are the kinds of arguments that people make when people engaged each other, who moved, when they understood a little bit more about some of the trade-offs, how and why did they make those trade-offs? So it depends on what you're looking at it for. The surveys, the point estimate's a little better, if you want to see whether it's 60-40 this way, but it's the qualitative analysis that's a little tougher, that's harder to tickle through, that you're going to find from a focus group. And so am I, wedded to any of this? No. I thought when Dan Brady first recommended Bernie Saraki to me, and Dan Brady sent him to me, I met with him. It was very credible. He clearly had all kinds of information. He was willing to do it, and the price was really right. He was willing to do it for free. Right. And especially the kinds of consultants, people are concerned about outside consultants, and in a modern era, you're going to have some. But it also means that there are sometimes we can do things without having to spend money if we're tapping into the right kind of circumstances. And then hopefully, it's a win-win for everybody. We at least feel like we've been helped a little bit, maybe some additional information. Citizens hopefully feel like that there have been additional means by which they can have an input. And hopefully, the graduate students are involved, get more experience, and they go on to be, great city managers somewhere. But anyway, that is at least our hope. If there aren't any other questions, I think I'd like to move on. Thank you so much. The last item we have is a library joint task force. And as all of you have known, as I've been mayor, I've resisted forming task forces, resisted forming any additional committees. In fact, we've consolidated rather than added. This winds up being a fairly clear task, however. We know that the library did do a rather extensive analysis of its needs. The overall volume of circulation went from approximately 600,000 to 1.5 million over the course of about 8 years. That was a substantial increase. It put a clear burden. It made it clear that there were additional needs. There were space needs, there were probably additional staffing needs, certainly parking needs, other things. So this has been addressed. What I understand the previous library boards have been told by previous mayors and councils is don't even think of going south. That don't even think of taking the parking lot immediately south to you. And so some of the other possible options of working on the existing facility that could have taken advantage perhaps of economies of scale or taken advantage of existing staff. An East Side branch would be considerably more expensive. You'd have to have additional staff out there. So this is one of the reasons why I am asking this particular group to be formed. And specifically, I'd like the charge would be broad but yet narrow. This is not involving personnel management or how the library operates. That's a library board's business. This would be to develop a plan to guide future library development to deal with the library and expansion at its current location and what those options might be. And I do want to thank Alderman Sage, who had been involved in a previous kind of a liaison group with the library in the past. And certainly some of his involvement and insight on this in working with me and helping advise me has been very, very helpful. So the two people that I have asked to serve from the city council are Alderwoman Johnny Painter, who had served for a period of time, about a year or so on the library board, and Alderwoman Karen Schmidt, who not only is a librarian, but it's in her ward, and certainly was a logical choice for many reasons. And the library board chose 3 representatives, to move forward. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes, clarifying that. Again, there are clear needs. There are some budgetary, there's some money that the library board set aside for some capital improvements. That's not necessarily going to cover the cost, but there is some money that they have done, understanding that they do have future needs. So we've only said 10 minutes. I won't count my blithering on toward the 10 minutes. If there are comments, questions at this point, the date I'm asking them to complete their work is about 9 months. That is July 31st, 2015. And we're hoping that they can come up with some recommendations and options. Maybe it's not even a singular recommendation, but hey, these are 3 options for us going forward. Alderwoman Schmidt.
I do have a couple of questions, actually. One of them has to do with the management of the task force in terms of, is that being worked through David Hale's office, posting of minutes? I'm assuming that, Open Meeting Act, all of the details about how the public knows what we're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. In fact, I've sent out several emails attempting to clarify that. Absolutely. We would assume that, I assume that the library task force would meet in public. That is bound by the Open Meetings Act. It may be that technically there might be some reason why they don't, but I am asking that they do that. I'd like them to meet here in the council chambers so that if we move, hopefully, sometime in the next several months, Scott Sprouls, don't hold your chest, here. But as we begin to move perhaps live streaming all boards and commissions and all meetings, that this is about the only place we can do it. So I also think that this is a better venue, a more welcoming venue than a meeting in the library or a library room that might not seem quite as accessible to the public. So in terms of the organization of it, I have asked Emily Callahan, who's the head of the 3 Ps committee, to just call and coordinate the first meeting. And so we would assume that Beth Oakley in the city manager's office would help coordinate that part of it. So in terms of, we don't want necessarily 5 people on the task force attempting to organize this unto themselves. And the only reason why I've asked Emily is that somebody needed to do, basically call the first meeting, and at that point the library task force can come up with its own chair and conduct its own work. Does that help?
I appreciate that. Thank you. And my other question has to do with, I guess, how we engage with the library staff who have put a lot of effort into this.
I would assume that the library staff would be at all meetings.
Okay,
I think it would be a very unusual thing if you were to, but again, you can't disinvite people. It's an open meeting, but I would think it would be logical that Georgia, her staff, whoever she felt was necessary to be at this meeting, would be at the series of them. How are you going to talk about the future growth of the library if you don't have your head librarian and some of your staff involved? And if there are other personnel issues, that's up to the library board. This is just a task to take a look at the future. What are the needs? What are the options? If you continue to have the same needs in the future, how are you going to handle that? Some ideas have been out. Maybe there'd be a possibility of expanding the current facility. Maybe there'd be a children's library. Whatever that might be, take a look at those things. And I don't understand how that could happen without having the staff there.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much. And at this point, Alderman Black, are you attempting to make a motion to adjourn, or do you have a snide comment? Or
Well, I
both?
wouldn't say snide. Thank you. Sorry. I just wanted to make a comment about tomorrow's meeting. I know that this kind of happened very quickly, and it took a lot of staff time. And it seems to me, I mean, I'm not able to make it. And Jim Fruin a couple months ago had suggested that maybe we push for every 5th, Monday in a month, that we can maybe reserve time aside for these joint meetings. I think that would be prudent to suggest. I didn't necessarily appreciate the rapidity with which that paradigm was looking for us to meet. And it's, I understand the urgency and why they want to move forward and why it's so important to our different governing bodies, but it makes it very challenging when it's kind of sprung upon us, and I know we just barely have 5 of us going. Is that?
Well, the only thing I would say here, and maybe I'd ask George Boyle, I'm a little uncomfortable about us talking about something that's not even on our agenda. I realize we're not acting.
I can't go tomorrow.
I can't go tomorrow either.
Right, and so I got to say my piece in
but
public.
We do have a majority that are going to be going. George, your just quick legal opinion, is there a problem with us just talking about this very briefly?
As long as there's not any final action taken.
Yeah, well, we're definitely not taking action, so.
It's probably best, the less the better.
The
Sure.
less, the better? Okay.
I'm just more perturbed by the process than I am necessarily about the content. I mean, I get why it's important, but
I can absolutely assure you, you are not alone.
right, and it just seems a little bit necessarily unfair that one business can call all the bodies of government together so quickly when not every other business has that ability. So, perhaps moving forward, the two issues I'd say is streamlining a nice process for how this might work, and number two is potentially putting together a agreement with Normal and the county to say maybe we reserve one day. And if we don't meet, we don't meet. That's no problem. But if we do, we have it reserved, and that public knows, we know, everybody is satisfied.
The only difficulty with that, I understand in principle, the only difficulty is we're not always sure when somebody's willing to invest $40 million. So sometimes we need to have a little bit of flexibility. But I don't disagree. Not only are you not alone, my guess is you're probably in the majority on both councils.
And the county.
And the mayors. So we'll see how this unfolds tomorrow. Mr.
I
Hale.
just wanted to say, I think we're up to about 7 aldermen that'll be attending, and they are going to record the meeting. It won't be live streamed, but then we will have that DVD to share with those who couldn't attend later this week to kind of review. So.
Alderwoman Stearns.
Well, I have the same concerns about the meeting, happening very quickly, et cetera, et cetera. It's other things that have been already said, but my question is then what was the process by which the meeting was scheduled? I mean, why are we having it? I mean, some of us have a lot of concerns about having it, about the availability of this kind of meeting for other businesses, et cetera. So what was the process by which the meeting was scheduled, and why are we doing this?
The reason we're doing it is for the 40 million. It's possible that we might be on the cutting edge of something. Now, whether that happens is another story. But mostly this happened on the Normal side. Mr. Boyle?
I was going to say that I thought you were talking about Mr. Black just kind of finishing a remark. I would suggest that
This not continue? And this would be appropriate to be brought up tomorrow evening, right? Right.
If we go.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyle. I appreciate it.
you.
Now can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Black. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed can stay. Thank you.